Horror movies should be scary, but they don't have to be this cruel. Today we're going to discuss 10 diabolical horror movies that are mean and vile. And there are no happy endings. If you can handle it, some of these are genuine recommendations, but honestly guys, I don't even like all of these movies, but they left a mark, so we gotta talk about them. If you actually want to watch any of these movies, I will let you know where you can stream them at the end of the video, and I have links to physical media in the description, and using them helps support the channel. But with all that said, my name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's dive in. When Evil Lurks from 2023. Residents of a rural town discover that a demon is about to be born among them. They desperately try to escape before the evil is born, but it may be too late. Ultimately, this is a demon possession movie, and that tends to be one of my least favorite subgenres of horror, but When Evil Lurks is an example of doing something dramatically different. It's an Argentinian film with such fascinating lore around it. How this possession works is it starts with a rotten one, which is a demon-possessed person, and being demon-possessed just decays the human body to a shocking degree, turns people into a disgusting, repulsive blob of flesh mass. And if you don't kill it properly, then killing it unleashes the demon out into the world to be physically born. And this movie essentially takes place during the birthing process. While it's leading up to the birth, the evil infects and decays everything around, causes people to kill each other or themselves. And in the movie, we essentially follow these guys who are trying to get out of this situation, trying to get out of this town, while everything is falling apart around them. I love that story. I love that direction for demon possession. I mean, if this kind of thing actually happens, I imagine it would be like this, nasty and gross. And that is what describes this movie. It is disturbing. It is shocking. It really pushes the bar on what is acceptable in a horror film. If you wanted to criticize it, you could call out that there are no likable characters, there are no smart characters, but I actually think that really works. People a lot of times act like dumb characters in a movie is some kind of screenwriting flaw. Sometimes it's not, because there are not so smart people in the world, and I think smart people would not have caused this situation. You needed a couple of dumb losers to ruin everything, and that's what sets us on this path and gives us a movie, and I'm glad we have this movie because it is shocking but really good.
I seem to be a very special person now. I'm in the middle of a strange adventure. Then look!
The Brood.
The Brood from 1979. A father tries to uncover an unconventional psychologist therapy techniques on his institutionalized wife, while a series of brutal attacks committed by a brood of mutant children fall upon their loved ones. This is written and directed by David Cronenberg, and he made this not long after he went through a bitter divorce and custody battle himself. And this really feels like a movie from a guy who flat out hates his wife, who writes and casts his wife as an actual monster whose feelings and rage are literally destroying everyone around them. It is such an angry movie about the potential horrors of motherhood. And I don't know, maybe Cronenberg's ex-wife totally deserved this, but this is an angry, diabolical movie to make out of that experience. Of course, Cronenberg has made a lot of messed up, disturbing movies in his career, but this is one that should get more credit than it often does. There is actually a scene where a character gets viciously murdered in the middle of an active preschool classroom. That is not something you see in movies very often. There is a birthing scene in here that is so vile and disgusting. But on top of all of this, I mean, it's David Cronenberg. It's really well made. It is beautifully shot. It has such a great cold winter atmosphere to it. All of the performances are spectacular, especially from Samantha Eggar as the wife and mother, and Oliver Reed as her psychologist. And his demented character is enough to get this movie on this list. My God, his therapy scenes are just so gross and violating. And he's got this one patient in the movie who is addicted to him and his therapy techniques. And just whenever that guy is on screen, it's so off-putting and distasteful. This is an uncomfortable movie in many ways, but it is so good. It is so creepy, so fascinating, so well written. I love The Brood.
How would you feel about going to the mountains for Christmas with Grace?
It's okay. You have nothing to be scared about.
The Lodge from 2019. Following the unexpected and traumatic death of their mother, two children are forced to spend Christmas at an isolated lodge with their father's new fiancée, Grace. When a blizzard traps them inside, terrifying events summon specters from Grace's dark past. That's the basic idea, but let me further break down for you just how insane the plot of the movie is. Now, yes, these kids just lost their mother in a horrible way because the mother was so depressed from the dissolution of her marriage, because the father left her for another woman, and that woman is the traumatized sole survivor of a cult massacre. And the father just traps all of these horribly traumatized people in an isolated cabin for them to get to know each other, to finally start liking each other. And that is a horrible idea, but when I watch a movie and it sets up an insane premise, I'm like, all right, game on. What are you going to do with this? And this movie absolutely brings it. It is so evil and diabolical in so many ways. It's a slow burn, but I never found it boring. I was just so intrigued with what was going on, going back and forth of my guesses of what's really happening here. And as different reveals unraveled, and especially once we got to the end, I was just like, ugh. And I don't mean ugh as in this is bad. I mean like what horrible things this movie is making me sit through. The Lodge is so mean. It is so cruel to its characters, but it's another one that's pretty beautifully well made. It's got very cold and oppressive snowy atmosphere, incredibly atmospheric, great performances, especially from Riley Keough at the center. I don't know if I can say I even like this movie, but I respect it, and it took me on an insane journey. The Unknown from 1927. On the lam, criminal Alonzo hides in the circus as the Armless Wonder, a performer who uses his feet to hurl knives. Meanwhile, the ringmaster's daughter has an extreme phobia of being touched by men and is romantically pursued by not only Alonzo, but the circus strongman. So yes, this is a silent film, and I'm not actually the biggest silent film guy. I like a lot of comedies from like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, but most of the time when I watch a silent horror film, I end up kind of bored, and I'm okay admitting that, but not The Unknown. This is one that absolutely held my attention. It's only 68 minutes long, and it has a consistently interesting plot with multiple twists and turns that are often really sick and demented. It's starring Lon Chaney and Joan Crawford. Lon Chaney was a massive star of the silent film days, especially in the horror genre. He's probably best known today as the definitive cinematic Phantom of the Opera, but this is my favorite of his movies I've seen and my favorite of his performances. It's a very dark and tragic performance. It's got really good circus carnival atmosphere to it. I love that kind of stuff. And you might think that a silent movie that's this old is not capable of getting that demented, but this movie absolutely is. I can't say why in this video this film is so diabolic because it would be such a spoiler, and I want you to go on this journey. But it is a disturbing tale of mutilation. It is unusually cruel to its characters by the standards of any era, and it's absolutely one of my favorite silent horror films I've ever seen. Very worth watching. The Coffee Table from 2022. A couple going through a difficult time in their relationship have just become parents. To shape their new life, the husband decides to buy a new coffee table, which his wife unfortunately hates, and this decision will change their existence forever. This is a Spanish film, and one that I actually watched for the first time a couple of months ago, and I took this long to talk about it because I needed to cool down, okay? I don't like this movie. I do not like it. In fact, when I watched it, I almost turned it off multiple times, but I kept stopping myself from turning it off and being like, okay, I want to finish it, and at least it'll be interesting to talk about on the channel. But when it was over, I said to myself, I don't ever want to talk about this on this channel. I don't ever want to give this movie any publicity. But here we are, I'm talking about it, and it's just too diabolical to not talk about on this list. The true central idea of this movie, which I'm not going to spoil, but I will say it is so vile and demented and cruel to an insane degree. But I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's a sickening premise, but if you want to make a movie about that, go for it, do the best you can. But I just don't like it because most of the movie is mundane conversations while you know in the background that something horrific just happened that most of the characters don't know about. It's actually supposed to be a black comedy, so you're supposed to find humor in that, but it utterly fails at that because I certainly never found it funny at all. It is just sickening and at times almost dull. There's other weird stuff in the movie, like a child in the building who's very romantically aggressive with the husband, just super weird. It is very low on on-screen violence or depravity or anything like that, and it's almost entirely dialogue. So the fact that it accomplishes being one of the most sickening and depraved movies you've probably seen in quite some time is impressive, but despite it all, I don't like it. I don't recommend it, but now the decision is yours on what you're gonna do with the coffee table. In a Violent Nature from 2024. This one made a pretty big splash last year in the horror community because it was the bold movie that decided we're going to do a typical backwoods slasher movie, but entirely from the perspective of the killer, where you follow a Jason Voorhees-like character walking through the woods, killing off campers one by one. I remember when I went to see this in the theater, I was really nervous going in. Not because I thought I was going to be scared or that it was going to be too disturbing for me, but because I was afraid of extreme boredom. I was worried I was walking into being bored out of my mind for 90 minutes because just following a Jason-like character walking around the woods, that sounded like it could be good, but it could be really boring. I ended up not finding it boring in the slightest. There's very little time where it does feel like you're just watching a character walk through the woods. Most of the time, it's very clear where he's walking to, what the mission is. There's character interactions and dialogue going on in the background that he's watching. I always thought there was something consistently interesting going on screen, so I was never bored. And I just loved it. I loved the ambient atmosphere of this film. The word nature being in the title is very apt because I just loved the vibe of nature. You just hear the sound design of the outside woods. There's no score. There's very little style to it at all. You think following Jason the whole time is going to be fun because watching Jason kill people is a lot of the fun of a Friday the 13th movie. But the reality is a lot of the time, it makes you feel kind of bad. The kills are so brutal, so horrific, that it makes you feel guilty for being in the perspective of the brutalizer. It's not a thrill ride. It makes you sit and wallow in the dark reality of what it takes to normally give you that thrill ride and make you feel bad about it. That is diabolical. And the ending kind of is too, for what the filmmaker does to the audience and what he makes you sit through. A lot of people are upset about the ending. I'm not necessarily, because I found it weird and curious, but you might be mad at the director for what he does to you in the last 10 minutes, and that could be part of the fun.
Did you really kill your mama?
I guess I did.
Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer from 1986. Arriving in Chicago, a young woman moves in with her brother Otis and his ex-convict friend, Henry, who starts schooling Otis in the ways of being a serial killer. So I'm not usually a horror fan who seeks out the most disturbing movies, and there are certain films that I'm still trepidatious to actually watch. And for a long time, Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer was one of those movies. And I was intimidated going in to watch it just last night, but I decided now is the time. And I am so glad I did, because I think it is such a phenomenal movie. Now, we talk about a lot of fun horror movies, goofy, campy horror films. That's kind of the bread and butter of Cobwebs. This is not any of those things. It is a brutally real feeling drama about extremely broken and traumatized people, played by actors who do not feel like actors, but feel so uncomfortably authentic as these people, especially Michael Rooker as the star Henry. But for a lot of the movie, I was okay with it. I don't necessarily want to watch the most disturbing stuff on screen, but I was okay with the things going on in this movie. I could handle it just fine. I liked the great 80s score of the film. That kind of gave me a little bit of comfort here, as well as the very autumnal atmosphere to it. This is a really good fall movie, and I just found the characters fascinating to watch. But at a certain point, once we get to the third act, it gets so rough. And honestly, the word I would use isn't even disturbing, but it's heartbreaking. I found this movie heartbreaking in so many ways. It is so emotionally devastating, particularly involving the sister character in the film who, she is one of the most tragic characters that I have watched in a long time, and my heart was ripped out of my chest for her. It is a dark and sad and brutal movie. While not actually being very graphic, the violence on screen is fairly minimal. A lot of times you will see the aftermath of kills and you will hear with this creepy, distorted sound design what happened to lead to that, and that just adds such an element of creepiness to it that is so unsettling. I can honestly say this is an extremely powerful, beautifully well-made film, and also it's completely diabolical.
So many things have felt so wrong.
Why are you doing this? Speak No Evil from 2022. A Danish family visits a Dutch family they met on a vacation, and what was supposed to be an idyllic weekend slowly starts unraveling as they try and stay polite in the face of unpleasantness. This is another one that I don't know if I can really say I like, but it left a mark and I will not soon be forgetting it. It's a Danish film, but it's almost entirely in English, and the director actually made it as sort of a commentary on Danish culture and how they are too polite. And this is an incredibly awkward and uncomfortable movie. And it might be really uncomfortable for Americans in particular, such as myself, to watch, because you just can't imagine why the lead couple is staying in this house, visiting this family, as they are confronted with so much of the most weird and vile and just subtly uneasy actions that these other people are committing. It's sort of a mean and vile movie as a Death of a Thousand Cuts in a really interesting way. It's beautifully shot, has great cabin in the woods style atmosphere, and all the actors are incredible. But by the end of the movie, I can't deny I felt like it exists somewhat just for shock value. And it shocks. It is an upsetting ending. It is miserable. This is just one of the most diabolical endings in a all too real way that just feels gross. But if you're looking for that kind of experience in your movie night, Speak No Evil, there you go. I gotta check out the American remake. I hear that's like the fun version. I don't know what that's gonna be like, but I'll watch it one of these days. Kill List from 2011. Nearly a year after a botched job, a hitman takes a new assignment with the promise of a big payoff for 3 killings. When I first saw Kill List, I thought I'd put in the wrong movie, because I had always heard that this is one of the best folk horror pagan cult films of all time. And I love that kind of genre. I'm like, oh yeah, the Wicker Man kind of thing, that sounds great. But for a long time, it's about a PTSD suffering soldier and now hitman who is in vicious arguments with his wife. But this is a film with very little exposition and just drops you into situations and asks you to keep up and to figure out what's going on. It took me some time to get my footing in this one, but I got there eventually. And while there are small hints along the way to what is really going on with the folk horror cult, which is usually what this film is entirely sold on, most of it feels like a very grounded and very non-glamorized version of a hitman movie. And this is another movie that I can't say I love. I think it's good. I think it does a lot of things very, very well. but I certainly can't say I enjoy it. Some of it is from so much of the screen time pushing the vision of hitmen as mundane contract workers, and it's not necessarily that fun to watch. But the other reason is the ending, which I won't be spoiling, but it is the reason it is on this list. It is so mean, so vile, so sickeningly cruel that when I first saw it, I legitimately felt sick to my stomach. Like, it is awful. It makes the ending of Speak No Evil look easy by comparison. Like, it just is something I don't ever want to watch again. But I do think rewatchability is somewhat overrated, and there is value in a movie provoking an intense reaction in you and you never wanting to have it ever again. That is Kill List for me. Never gonna be one of my favorite folk horror movies, but yeah, I'd probably say it is the most disturbing folk horror film I've ever seen.
What is this place?
I brought you here to bury Alan's cat. Pet Sematary.
Pet Sematary from 1989. A town doctor moves into a quaint small town with his wife and 2 children. After their cat is accidentally killed in the road, a friendly neighbor advises its burial in a mysterious nearby cemetery. I wanted to talk about Pet Sematary on this list as a bit of a respite, because in contrast to most of the movies on this list, this is one of my favorite horror movies. I love Pet Sematary with all of my heart. It is my favorite Stephen King movie. I know that's blasphemous to some people, The Shining, Carrie, but Pet Sematary is it for me. It has the perfect representation of exactly that classic Stephen King atmosphere that I love. A small town in Maine, often during the fall. The vibes of this are so good. I genuinely love the cast here. I think lead Dale Midkiff gets way too bad of a rap most of the time. I think he's good. And Fred Gwynne steals the show. He is the best as Judd. I just love his character so much. But I do think it's hard to deny that Pet Sematary is one of the meanest and most cruel stories that Stephen King ever crafted. Now, I love the book Pet Sematary, and it is much scarier, much darker, and much more unpleasant than the movie. It gets deep into the psychology of extreme grief and makes you wallow in it. And when I read it, I needed to take a break from it for a little while because it just got so heavy. It's a brutal book. But with the movie, I actually give director Mary Lambert credit that she made it more palatable and enjoyable to watch. I don't think I would ever read Pet Sematary again, but I love watching the movie over and over again. Some might think that makes it worse or bad, but I like that. I love this very 80s horror atmospheric Stephen King movie that we've got. It does have one of the scariest things ever to be in a movie with Zelda. Absolutely terrifying. Pet Sematary is diabolical, but it's one of my favorite films. Before we get into streaming options, I just want to send out a massive thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible. If you want to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to give a special shout out to Mike Nelson, Harrow73, and Barnabas Collins. You guys are the absolute best. This is a new thing I'm adding as a response to viewer feedback. A lot of people are always asking me where stuff is streaming, so I put the streaming options on the screen, but of course these are subject to change. And if you do want to buy them on physical media, I've got affiliate links in the description below. If you want to hang out with me more, you can click on the video on the screen, give a like and a subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you all so much. I will see you next time. Bye.